Do you want to hire the best salespeople for your company? Our friends at SalesFuel have developed a digital platform to help sales managers hire smarter, and it's called SalesFuel Hire. SalesFuel Hire is an online software tool that measures a candidate's sales tendencies, motivational factors, empathy, and behaviors, along with key indicators that identify job fit. It will even warn you if the candidate is going to be toxic to your team. The analytics identify natural tendencies that often go undetected during the interview. Don't you want to hire a salesperson that's a natural fit? Candidates complete a 4-part assessment, and then SalesFuel Hire alerts the hiring manager on what to look for in the interview. It also suggests interview questions based on that person's profile. And most importantly, your team needs no training to get started. Because you're listening to this show, I can give you a special one-time deal. You can purchase 1 month of unlimited access to SalesFuel Hire for $199, but only if you use the promotional code LORNE. That's LORNE. With this special offer, you can send an unlimited number of candidates through the SalesFuel Hire tool. To get started, go to salesfuel.com/hire and use the promotional code LORNE. That's LORNE to get this amazing deal. Welcome back to another episode of the Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein, and we are here at the ATD conference in Washington, D.C. And I've got another awesome guest with some really cool technology that we're going to talk about. With me is C. Lee Smith, who is the Chief Executive Officer at SalesFuel. Welcome to the show, Lee.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, Lee, you've been running this company since 1989, and that is a long time ago. Before technology was kind of really...
Before the internet even, yeah.
Before the internet, yeah. So what was the premise of starting the company?
The premise of starting the company was sales intelligence. The idea that a salesperson who can provide insights to a client, opens doors. If you walk in, if you don't walk in empty-handed, you won't walk out empty-handed. If you're valued to your client, they'll trust you. They'll welcome you every time that you call. Or stop by at the time. There was not a lot of email was done back in 1989. So what we did is we did a lot of business research, and we categorized it and made it simple, super easy then for salespeople to get their hands on. We actually started off in 1989 by sending things through the mail and actually using file folders in a milk crate. Is how we started in '89, and then we progressed to fax on demand, and then we progressed to a bulletin board service, and then the internet in '95.
So it's really interesting because every company relies on sales, right? I mean, that's a big deal, and you must. 30 years in this business, you must know a lot about what it is to be a good salesperson, and to know how to engage customers and all that kind of stuff. And now you're doing some sales coaching, right? So now the premise of your product is that you provide a tool that helps sales managers coach their people. And just tell us a little bit of that. We weren't going to talk too much about your product, but I wanted to get a sense so people listening know what you're doing.
Well, a little bit of background too is that with SalesFuel, we believe that sales is the revenue engine of any company. So without it, nothing goes. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. You've heard that before. So the fuel for that engine is intelligence and it's people. So, and when it comes to coaching, that's a nice convergence of both intelligence and people. So the idea that is that we want to identify what keeps sales reps from doing a better job and selling more and making their customers happy. And so we take a look at what skill gaps are there. But we go beyond that, but we also take a look at things like attitude and resilience and motivation, because things like that are really the leading indicators for future performance in sales. It's one thing to take a look at somebody's metrics and say, oh, your close rate is too low, and you're not making enough calls and everything like that. Well, that's, if you're managing to that, the problem of it is that you're already several months behind and solving the problem.
Because those are all lagging indicators.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, so why are they not making those calls?
Looking at leading indicators.
Exactly.
So the advent of technology, I know a lot of the things I buy does not require a salesperson. In fact, a good chunk of the things I buy on the internet there is no salesperson. What do you think is the future of salespeople?
I would say that if you're a salesperson that sells a commodity, your days are limited because technology can replace you. If a robot can replace you, then you're probably going to be replaced at some point in time. What though is useful for salespeople to keep in mind is that we're human, and the people making the buying decisions are also human. And so sometimes they just need a little nudge, or sometimes they need some understanding as far as, okay, help me, that you understand what I'm going through in my situation. You understand the gravity of the problem that I need to solve and the consequences if I don't solve it. And so being able to have more emotional intelligence, for example, is absolutely critical for a salesperson these days.
Right.
Because of that human element, because it's something that technology to date has not been able then to replicate.
And a lot of that, at least for me as a buyer, is trust. Mm-hmm. Like when I see a salesperson, the first thing I assess in my brain in that first 2 seconds is, do I trust this person? Because I know I've had experiences with salespeople who weren't trustworthy, didn't work out, and people who are trustworthy, it's regardless of the ups and downs, I know that they'll see things through and take care of me.
We just completed a study of small, mid-sized business decision makers, and specifically,
how many?
1,163 that we just completed in February of 2019. And 46% of them say that they actually research not only the company, but also research the salesperson before they meet with them. So they're going online and they're doing the LinkedIn, and they're checking your social media and things of that nature. Because if the buying decision is big enough, whatever, then they're putting themselves out there. They're spending their political capital to make a decision either in your favor or against you. And they need to know that, one, I can trust you, and two, is this person actually going to deliver what they promised? Are they going to perform when the chips are down?
I'll tell you a quick story, but first I want to ask, where can folks get that report?
You can go to salesfuel.com, click on research, and there's more information there. We have some sample findings there, along with a contact us form that you can fill out then and request more information from it.
So my guests, they may not know, but I was in Las Vegas last week, and I did 23 shows at the Unleash conference. And we're looking to partner with another conference, and the owner of that conference flew out to see me. So he sat with me for an hour, and we talked for another half hour. And I've never had anyone kind of do that due diligence on working with me, that they would fly from one place to another just to kind of get a sense of like, well, what's this about? And it was great that we met, because on the phone, he was a little stiff, but once we hung out for a bit, he was like super, super nice, super personable, and I actually trusted him more.
Yeah, and that's because he was able to read your body language and your facial expressions, and were you leaning in when you were talking to them? Were you genuinely interested in what he was saying to you, or were you just trying to rush through the meeting? There's things like that you really can't get from an email or from a text message.
So computers are not going to replace salespeople when it's...
So the bigger the buy, the bigger the risk.
Okay.
And the bigger the risk, the more need for a salesperson that actually is competent and caring.
So when you say the bigger the buy, is there a dollar thing, or is it the type of product, or the type of service?
For example, in the study I just referenced, small business owners will actually bring 4 to 6 people in on average for a buy as little as $30,000. But to a small business owner, that's a lot of money.
Right.
So, and of course, when you get into a bigger organization, it's not their money, but at the same point in time, hey, this is my job, and I'm going to be called on the carpet if I make a bad decision or if it blows up in my face.
So I'm so curious. I want to ask you a ton of questions, but the first one that comes to mind is, what makes a really good salesperson? I think everyone thinks it's something, and maybe we have it wrong.
We find that one of the most important things that a salesperson has to have is attitude. Obviously, a lot of positivity. You have to have intelligence, so these days you have to be smart. But you have to have emotional intelligence as well as book smarts, for sure. One of the key differentiators among salespeople, actually there's 2 of them. One of them is a discovery process. Can they ask smart questions, and can they shut up and listen to the answers to the questions, and then can they connect the dots then to solve problems or to help their clients achieve goals? So that discovery process really gives the salesperson what they need to be able to answer objections, to be able then to persuade somebody that the deal is right for them. And if you don't ask those questions up front, as most salespeople tend to rush through that process, because they already have their pitch in mind. They know what they want to sell you because they've got a quota they got to meet by the end of the month. If you can ask those smart discovery questions and listen to the answers and actually do something with it, that makes you stand out. The other thing that we notice is really important for salespeople is resiliency. So salespeople tend to get the door slammed in their face figuratively a lot, or they get ghosted online and emails and things of that nature. You have to be resilient enough to know that, hey, if I really believe I can help this person, then I'm going to stick with it. And I mean, you and I were having a conversation then, with another gentleman this morning about the fact that you were happy that he stuck with it and that he kept calling you and he kept front of mind and that sort of thing, and it helped you stay organized and stay focused on task.
Yeah, he made sure that we had this interview right now.
Right. Yeah, and
which I was so grateful because otherwise it wouldn't happen.
Exactly. Well, so am I. So that kind of resilience, though, is and not giving up after the first couple of no's or the first no responses or something like that. If you really believe you can help somebody, and I will also add to that these days at sales, it's not about persuasion, it's not about saying the magic words or anything like that. It's about helping people. And if you have that attitude going into it and you live it, then it's like, obviously, if you want to help somebody, then you need to understand fully what the problem is or what the goal is, and you want to learn all you can about that before you try to diagnose, or try to, you have to diagnose before you prescribe anything. And so, if you go into it with that mindset, it's like sales is about helping.
Yeah.
That sets you apart. So there's really three things there.
That's interesting. So I'm thinking about like the kind of person that would make a good salesperson, and I always think teachers would make great salespeople. I don't know why, but I just feel like, they're patient, they listen really well. I don't need that kind of typical hard-charging salesperson, in my experience, of what I bought. I like someone who just wants to hear my problem and then come back and say, here's a really good solution, and stick to it and make sure that it's clear. Like, hey, this is what you wanted, here's what and all those things are laid out. You know
what I've been thinking about a lot lately? This is off on a tangent maybe, but nurses.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, it's like, or, doctor's assistants or something like that, because again, I just made the medical analogy just a moment ago, but it's like caring, obviously, smart, have to be, resilient, gotta be, they put up with a lot of crap. And so, it's like, there's no reason why if you're selling home medical services or something like that somebody who's been a nurse wouldn't be great at it, because it doesn't require an extrovert, so to speak. It just requires somebody that cares and knows how to solve problems.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I wonder if we're going to be changing how it is that we hire salespeople. IBM, I just interviewed some folks at IBM, the head of talent acquisition, and one of the things that they've got is a tool, an internal tool. So let's say they want to hire a blockchain developer, and there are no blockchain developers.
Yeah.
They look internally, and they know people in a certain way with certain dimensions. And they can say, oh, this person's a financial analyst. They've got 70% of what it takes to be a blockchain developer. So they reach out to that person and say, hey, do you want to be a blockchain developer? And they're like, sure. And they've got like most of the skills. And they wouldn't have connected the dots necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I wonder, is anyone doing that around sales?
We are. Actually,
you are.
Yeah, so thank you for teaming me up beautifully on that. It's like, I don't know if that was your intent, but
No.
We're actually doing that. We actually have these candidate profiles, for example, that analyze not only their sales aptitude, their sales tech aptitude, but also those people skills that I mentioned, their behavioral tendencies. We take a look at that. More importantly, their motivation. 7 different realms of motivation. And then last thing we take a look at is that something that's so prevalent today, unfortunately, is toxicity. What is the risk of hiring a toxic employee? Because if you bring one of those into your sales team, not only have you made a bad hire, but then they actually drag down the rest of your sales team.
Right.
And the problem with those people are they're hard to get rid of. I mean, because there are all kinds of laws and things like that you have to follow, and you need to follow the law. And it's like we take a look at all those things then, and we actually are able to tell you, is this person better for hunting down new business? Is this person better at account management? You could take, is this person a challenger in a challenger methodology of sales, for example? Is this person more of a do-it-yourself or go-it-alone kind of person? Or is this person better as a support person? I mean, we're able to tell you all those types of things.
Sure. That's cool. I wonder if, as technology becomes more prevalent, that we'll look at sales in the way you're describing it, right? So the way you described a salesperson is not what I imagined or experienced when I heard about salespeople and then became a salesperson. Like when I first started working, I worked at a high-tech company in the Bronx in the 80s. And I got a job, I was the marketing person. But then because of the company's being a startup, I had to do sales. And I just kind of did it. And no one trained me on how to do it. But I remember it was kind of like, they appreciated that kind of like, they appreciated the resiliency and the stick-to-itness. And I am sure, I can't remember, but I'm sure I may have pissed people off. Like, I don't know if I was the kind of person that I was today, for sure, not. But I don't know if I was thinking about it the way you're talking about.
I can guarantee you, earlier in my career, I pissed people off. I mean, I think that's not. I mean, when I talk about toxicity too, I'm talking about toxic personalities. That it's more the norm than the exception.
Sure.
All human beings are capable of behaviors or whatever that are regrettable, and salespeople in particular, that you're putting yourself out there. Every call, every day, you're putting yourself out there. Whatever.
But I don't think we have like a mindset of what a really good salesperson really should be.
I think the problem is that there's so many different opinions on what that is, and also there's also different types of products. So if you're selling a commodity, the idea is let's get through everything as quickly as possible so that we can move on to the next one.
What would be an example of a commodity? Cars?
To some extent, to some extent, cars. But it's like it could be any component. It's like, so I need gears, I need metal, I need grain, I need things of that nature. To do something with it, I need steel. So cars could be that way to some extent. I mean, definitely. But if you're selling a professional service, for example, or you're selling a high-ticket item that really requires a lot of expertise then on how to use the product to solve a problem,
right?
That's not a commodity. And so, it really depends on the type of product that you're selling. And also then the mission and the values of the company that you work for also dictate that. So in my company, of course, we believe in being very helpful. We're a family, and our organization, we're very collaborative and everything like that. So that's obviously why we believe that that's super important. Where if you are in a company, though, that is more high-strung, high intensity, high result-driven, go, get them, and everything, burn you out in 3 months and cast you aside, you're going to have a different sales mentality and a different sales methodology that you want to follow.
Right. So what do you think about, and this is something I've considered, is that when I was as a recruiter, recruiting salespeople, I always thought it was interesting and shocking at first when I would hire a salesperson who's doing really, really well at one company, plunk them into another company, and they would fail miserably. Or converse, right? And that made me think, well, it's not just that person, because as a kind of, I've had to sell, I believe that I'm more affected by my emotions and my surroundings than
a lot of
other people are.
No, and I think the way to think of it is think of it like, why does a plant thrive in one garden and then die in another?
Sure.
Okay,
Context, right?
So it's like, it's the soil, which is in business, that's your culture. And it's also having a competent gardener to look after it and care for it. Well, in business, that's your direct manager. Or in sales, that's your sales manager. So if you don't have, you can take a really star salesperson and plunk them into a culture that is a totally wrong fit for them, or just a toxic culture.
So how do you assess that? I mean, it's easy, one thing, to assess a person because it's a discrete component, but now you're talking about assessing the whole system, the context, the culture.
You have to, and that's the thing, it's like, it's not a company culture. I don't necessarily, people are striving for company culture, but it's like, I really believe in what I call microcultures, which are, each team has its own.
Yeah, who is that person going to deal with?
So what you do is that the thing is that culture is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. So what you have to do is you have to ask them, you have to ask all of them that are stakeholders in that team, either on that team or work closely with that team. That's who you ask, and we do an assessment of 52 different metrics of culture, about half of which deal with the manager, the leader of that team, and about a quarter of them deal with the other team members, and about a quarter of them deal with the company itself. And from that, then that also then tells us how we can help coach the manager, the sales manager in this case, to actually be a better sales manager to improve their culture.
And what's the efficacy been of the coaching of sales managers? How has it turned out?
So far, we're still right in the thick of it. But the thing about it is that everyone that we've taken through the program has told us that they've seen a remarkable shift. The morale is up, sales are up. We've seen the numbers go from double-digit increases to high double-digit increases in sales, organizations we've worked for. And it's just simply because if you improve a sales rep, you've improved one person, but if you improve a sales manager, you improve their entire team.
Right. Cool. What do you think the future is of sales and sales coaching and the tools that you guys provide and just the whole industry?
Well, I definitely think that artificial intelligence is going to continue to play a bigger and bigger factor
How so?
into it. Well, I think that there are some things that you can do for role playing, for example, which nobody seems to really like to do in sales, but it's how you practice, it's how you get good at it. I mean, you take the guys that race an Indy car, they're on a simulator or whatever because they can't get track time all the time, so they're on a simulator. So I can see the same kind of thing happening then in sales, where you have a simulator using artificial intelligence then to actually mimic then the real world sales situation.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I can totally see that happening.
I mean, when you say that, I think, well, we could simulate any interpersonal relationships. And, when as a young guy, I'm like, well, I got to kind of practice asking a girl out, right? So if I had a simulator, I could simulate that and actually make me better at doing that.
That'd be great for emotional intelligence. Wouldn't it? It's like, oh, no, you can't,
right.
Yeah, you can't say that. Eyes up here, all that. You can't.
So, I mean, it's interesting because I don't know a whole lot of companies that have coaches for their employees. Mm-hmm. But it seems like sales, it's kind of like they are I hate to use the word athletes, but there's like a very regular sense of performance and statistics. Like you can see.
It's very results driven.
It's very results driven.
And just like athletics.
And why is that the case with sales, but not the case with other employees, even though everyone has to produce something?
Everyone has an impact on sales. We recently interviewed on our Manage Smarter podcast the gentleman who founded Barefoot Wines, and his thinking is that you're either in sales, if you deal directly with the customers, you're in sales. Otherwise, you're in sales support. Yeah, so everybody has a hand.
Engineers.
Everybody has a hand in it. And sales, because the engineers do a bad job, but where then the sales people are selling a bad product.
Right.
It's like that's not going to work. So everybody's got a hand in it.
And how do you focus on? Do you focus on the sales support side, like helping the rest of the team support the sales?
Well, and to answer your earlier question then too, is like it happens because the salespeople are the ones directly associated with where the money comes from.
Yeah.
All right, so the others are indirectly associated with it. So what's happening is that the salespeople will get the coaching first, and then what should happen then is like anybody else then should also receive their own coaching, their own professional development. And this is an area that we're starting to see, thankfully, get a little bit more notice and a little bit more budget, but a lot more needs to happen in that area for companies across the board.
What are some of the common breakdowns that a salesperson has and the common coaching remedies?
Normally starts with failure to close. So it's like you can do everything right, you can give a good presentation, but you can't close. And
why can't people close usually?
We found then through our assessments, then about 40% of the time it's because they've done a poor job at discovery. So that goes all the way back to the initial asking of questions and getting to know the situation of the customer. If they haven't done their homework and they haven't done a good job there, then they're building their entire sales premise on a shaky foundation.
So for a salesperson, they should have a script, the front end, or some kind of data collection where they're doing the discovery.
Absolutely. So
because it's hard to remember, I guess.
You do the research first. And I mean, you go beyond LinkedIn, you go beyond Google and the website. And it's like you need to have some insight then that you can provide up front. So it's like that's how you get the customer then to want to talk to you.
Right.
It's like, okay, yeah, talking to you is going to result in something valuable for me, so I'm more apt to do it. So you start with insights. And then you take that research and you ask, you have 2 or 3 really smart questions. And then you shut up and you listen, and then you answer your follow-up. You ask your follow-up questions based on what they just told you, and what that forces a salesperson to do. The number one, not number one, but definitely one of the top things that salespeople do wrong, is that when you're answering a question that I've just asked you, whatever, the salesperson's already thinking about, okay, here's how I'm going to use this, and to really knock their socks off with what I'm going to say next. And meanwhile, the customer is still talking, and usually the customer, the most useful data that the customer gives you is at the end of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And you've totally missed it because you're in your own head thinking about the next really super impressive thing that you're going to say next.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I think becoming older, I've become better at listening, but more so because, and I try to do this on my show, is that I want the guest, yourself, or whoever I have, whatever they say has an impact on me. and I want to allow that impact. One, I enjoy the impact. It's like I want to be impacted by what you're saying. And I think that whoever's listening is going to be impacted as well. But I think people like to be heard.
Right. I mean,
it's a better experience.
I feel more comfortable in trusting you to solve my problem or to help me achieve my goals if I actually feel like you understand, what it is I'm trying to do and what I'm going through and how it's going to personally impact me as well as my company.
That's great advice. Any other pearls of wisdom? I mean, I think, I know we have kind of like a time box on how long we can talk, but I've got a ton of questions. Should I just keep going?
Just keep going.
Yeah. So, folks out there who are listening, they know a salesperson. Mm-hmm. They may not be the salesperson. They may not be the sales manager. But they see this salesperson as, there's some things that aren't quite working. What could they do to, get them some feedback or approach them? Or what would be a good way to communicate to a salesperson if it's not the manager? Or even if it's the client? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you say to a salesperson who's not doing what you want them to do?
That really depends on what the salesperson's areas of weakness are and their skill gaps. And also, the way you say it also depends on how they take in information. So you take a look at their behavioral tendencies, and you have some people then that are just, they get stuff done. It's like that they're hard driven. It's like, let's get it done. You have other people then that are dreamers, creatives, influencers, and that sort of thing. Then you have some people then that just wants to be everybody's buddy, and why can't we all just get along? And then you have some people then that are these data wonks and overanalyze everything, or hopefully they analyze it just to the proper level, but sometimes they overanalyze it. And you really have to speak in those channels, so that if you have somebody then that is very reliant on data and facts and figures and everything like that, you better give them some facts and figures and the sources where they can go verify it so that they can trust what you're saying. Meanwhile, if you have somebody like that's really an influence or whatever, it's like talk to them about, be imaginative, be creative, brainstorm, let's think outside the box and go off on tangents.
Do you do any work around teaching salespeople like Myers-Briggs or behavioral styles?
Yeah, it's like we do a lot of work with DISC, which is a variation, which is another version of a Myers-Briggs or a Big Five. So we do a lot in that area. As a matter of fact, one of our products, SalesFuel Coach, has a communication coach in it, so that it's designed to help the managers be able to relay that information directly to the salesperson in a way in which they can be heard. And you talk about impact. It's like it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we do is we take that DISC information and we compare the manager's DISC then to the salesperson's DISC, where we can say, okay, here's how you have to relay bad news. Here's how you have to ask them questions about what they're doing, or here's how you need to convey warmth and support to this particular type of person.
That's awesome. How can folks reach you if they want to follow you? And you have a podcast, too.
I do have a podcast that we co-host with Odai Strong, and she's dynamite, called Manage Smarter. It's every Sunday. We drop new content. We've had Tom Peters. We had Jeffrey Gitomer. We've had Jeffrey Hazlett. Cy Wakeman's been a frequent guest on the show. Really good stuff there. And you'll find that at managesmarter.com, my website, salesfuel.com. Obviously, look me up on LinkedIn. C.Lee Smith is where you'll find me there. And look forward to hearing any comments and answering any questions.
Lee, it's been great to have you on the show. I really appreciate your pearls of wisdom.
I really appreciate it, Lauren. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. And you've been listening to The Lauren Epstein Show here at the ATD Conference in Washington, D.C., and we'll see you on the next episode. Do you want to hire the best salespeople for your company? Our friends at SalesFuel have developed a digital platform to help sales managers hire smarter, and it's called SalesFuel Hire. SalesFuel Hire is an online software tool that measures a candidate's sales tendencies, motivational factors, empathy, and behaviors, along with key indicators that identify job fit. It will even warn you if the candidate is going to be toxic to your team. The analytics identify natural tendencies that often go undetected during the interview. Don't you want to hire a salesperson that's a natural fit? Candidates complete a 4-part assessment, and then SalesFuel Hire alerts the hiring manager on what to look for in the interview. It also suggests interview questions based on that person's profile. And most importantly, your team needs no training to get started. Because you're listening to this show, I can give you a special one-time deal. You can purchase 1 month of unlimited access to SalesFuel Hire for $199, but only if you use the promotional code LORNE. That's LORNE. With this special offer, you can send an unlimited number of candidates through the SalesFuel Hire tool. To get started, go to salesfuel.com/hire and use the promotional code LORNE. That's LORNE to get this amazing deal.